Hello and welcome to the Private Technology Project. I'm Derek and I'm so excited to show you how to get started with Linux. I'll be covering a list of topics from a very high level, so get ready, grab a notebook or your preferred way to take notes. And the main goal of this video is to show you how to start running Linux on actual hardware and get familiar with how Linux works. But first, we will need some common terms and basic knowledge before we can get started on our Linux journey. And one note, if you're already up to speed on the basics of Linux, you can go forward to this timestamp. Otherwise, follow along as I introduce some core concepts that help us understand what we are doing when we load an operating system. And here's some basic knowledge to cover before we get started in installing Linux. Now, what is an operating system? An operating system is a system of software that manages hardware devices and provides a common platform for all applications. The most familiar of these operating systems are macOS, Windows, iOS, and Android. Although Linux is widely deployed in server applications, it is slowly gaining more and more traction as a desktop replacement for macOS and Windows respectively, which is probably why you are here. And the most common way to install an operating system, if it hasn't been installed previously by the vendor, as with MacBooks or Windows laptops, is with an ISO file. An ISO file is a direct copy of what is on an optical drive. We use ISO files of operating systems and burn them to a CD or USB flash drive and boot from that device. Okay, now that we know what an ISO file is, we have two main ways to try Linux using that ISO file. First, we can run it by putting the ISO file on a USB stick and booting into it. And second, we can run our ISO file and install it on a virtual machine in some type of simulated environment, and we can use something like VirtualBox to do this. This is relatively simple and easy enough to do. I think it's a really good start for getting a quick demo of what Linux looks and feels like, but not really how we're going to use it in everyday applications. And I do prefer running Linux, even if we're just demoing it, a certain distribution or testing something out, on real physical hardware. This is because you will get the actual performance of the system as it is running on bare metal instead of being virtualized in a simulated environment, on top of a system that's already running an installed operating system. Also, it gets you more familiar with setting up partitions and allowing you to better understand what is going on underneath the hood, which learning the basics and why things work in the way they do is exactly what we love to do here on this channel. So you might have heard me throw around the term distribution and wondered, what did I mean by distribution? Well, a Linux distribution is essentially a bundle of a few core components into what we know as an operating system. And some of these core components include 1, the Linux kernel, which is basically a way for the hardware to talk to the software components, and 2, a user interface, and a user interface that supplies core functionality with a display server, desktop environment, and lastly, a package manager, a way to download and obtain software from a centralized repository. And if you're coming from Windows, this might be a little unfamiliar, but a package manager can be seen as a centrally located app store where you download what you want, like the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And now there's a little confusion when first getting into Linux because there are a plethora of different distributions everywhere. And it can be so hard to know which one is the right one to pick, leading to FOMO and not knowing if you picked the right choice. And ultimately, most distributions are downstream from a main trunk distribution. This means there are only a few core distributions to choose from, and the most notable are Red Hat Enterprise Linux, with its community-facing distribution as Fedora, Debian with a more opinionated distribution called Ubuntu, and Arch Linux. This is in no way comprehensive, but if you are curious, I will leave a link in the description if you want more information on popular distributions. Now, why did I go with Ubuntu, and specifically Linux Mint? Ubuntu is a very popular distribution and for good reason. It simply works right out of the box with minimal setup needed to install. And most people just want their stuff to work and do what it's supposed to do without having to set up all these different dependencies and codecs. And this is exactly where Ubuntu came in. While the upstream Debian focused on providing free and open source software, drivers, and codecs from default, Ubuntu focused on providing access to proprietary software, closed source drivers, and codecs to greatly increase user convenience and let stuff just work right out of the box. Another major reason is Debian has the notoriously long updates in between releases. This is usually around every 2 to 3 years. This means that software can be out of date for a few years depending on when it was packaged. And Ubuntu chose to do a 6-month release cycle, which allows access to newer software updates much sooner. Now, this Ubuntu distribution chose to be more convenient for users without having to worry about what software is packaged where. Of course, if this is something that matters to you, your distribution choice has probably already been made. Okay, with that out of the way, another question might be, what is dual booting? I've heard it before, but I don't know what it means or the benefits or drawbacks of using it. Now, dual booting is basically having more than one. In our case, the way I do it is 2 operating systems installed at the same time. And when this is set up correctly with a bootloader like Grub, this allows for easy switching between different operating systems. And one of the main reasons to dual boot is getting access to our current system until we plan on migrating off of that current system, moving full-time to our new system, which usually is Linux. This can really help ease the transition and allow an escape hatch if you need to just get something done in a more familiar environment. And with that being said, there are some drawbacks as well. Be it more complicated to get set up correctly, and it can sometimes break things or lock you out of one of your operating systems if it can't show up the bootloader, or Windows just sometimes tries to take it over, which is no fun. Now that I covered some basic knowledge of the Linux operating system, we can get into installing Linux. Yes, what you're here for. Here's what we're going to cover in the rest of this video. And feel free to use the chapter markers in the bottom part of the player if you're experienced or only want information on a specific topic. And we're going to look how to install Linux Mint 22.1, which is based off the Ubuntu 24.04 long-term support release. We're going to run a distro on a USB stick, commonly called a live ISO, and then we're going to install Linux on our system by formatting our drives and creating the partitions needed. And then we're going to get our bootloader set up with the Linux operating system. And next we're going to get familiar with the Cinnamon desktop environment. And this is all for now. I will meet you at the computer and I'll walk you through every step of installing the Linux operating system and walking you through how I do it, the best practices, and it'll be really easy. You just follow along as I do in the video, and by the end of it, you will have Linux installed and running correctly on your system. Let's get into it. This is Derek here. We are at the computer. I'm going to show you how to install Linux Mint 22 on your new machine. Let's get into it. And just to start us off, I'm drinking a nice tea. Yes, Western style. It's a little easier at the computer. And it's what we're doing. It's alright. I'd like to do Gong Fu, but I guess not today. I really recommend either trying this in a virtual machine or installing it on a clean hard drive with nothing else on it so you don't affect those files. If you're really paranoid about it and you want to do it with a partition, but you're afraid of messing up your drives and your operating system that's already on there, what you can do is use a program called Clonezilla. Basically takes a whole image of your hard disk as an ISO file, and you can actually put that on a new drive or save it somewhere else in case something does happen. I highly recommend please back up your system. You don't know what could happen if you make a wrong command, wrong move, and just best practice to back up. And you can always restore to how it was if something went wrong. Too many times I've done something, just wanted to get it done, and I'm like, screw it, I'll just get it done. And then you mess up your system and you gotta start over, and it's no fun. So I highly recommend getting a game plan before you even start. Just have a good backup plan in case anything does go wrong. Now here are some things we're going to need on hand before we can get our Linux system installed. First, we'll need a USB stick or flash drive that is completely free of any data, since we're going to overwrite anything that is currently on it. You can use Balena Etcher because it's probably one of the easiest GUI platform applications for writing our media to our disk, which is our USB flash drive. We'll download the ISO file from linuxmint.com, the website, and we can verify the checksum just to make sure it's actually what we're looking for and it's what we need. All right, so if we go to Firefox, let's go to linuxmint.com. All right, and then this is what we're downloading. Hit the download section. And then I recommended Cinnamon versus XFCE. If you got an older system, you can do XFCE, but I recommend Cinnamon if your computer, laptop, desktop is new enough. We'll just click the download button, and it says 3 gigs. It'll download an ISO file, and we'll use something like Belina Etcher to install it to our installation media. All right, so let's install this. I'll just use this one here. I'll show it's installing it. Not gonna take too long. And then we can download. We will save these to just our downloads right now. Save. And then we'll verify that this is actually what was produced by Linux Mint. So basically all SHA just stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm, and it's 256 bits in length. All this is saying is, it says right here, verifying the authenticity and integrity of a file. But the way a hashing algorithm works is it's deterministic. So we send our specific file we just downloaded through a hashing algorithm, and it'll produce a 256-bit hash. And if our hash matches up with their hash that they got when they first produced that file, it's saying the bits in this file are exactly the same as when we uploaded them. So there's no tampering of that file. That's the original file we actually wanted. And this allows us to verify, okay, this is the real ISO file that we need for our system, and it's not produced by some bad actors on the internet trying to download malware onto our system. So we can actually go to our folders. Right here. Go to downloads. There's our ISO file. We right click it and let's verify. Okay, it calculates the SHA 256 sum. And then actually it'll pull these from online, which is nice. But we can do local files. And I can just select the ones we downloaded. It's that one. And then GPG signed file, our downloads, and this one. And we can just hit verify. Everything looks good. This is an official ISO image signed by Linux Mint. And there we go. It is verified, and that's just saying this is the real file. This is what we downloaded. And it's really easy. Belina Etcher. This is what it's going to look like. A little simple utility. All right, we'll plug in our USB flash drive. We'll hit flash from file and then go to our downloads in that Linux Mint ISO. We'll select it and we'll change whatever drive we want to use. This is the drive I'm using. And we'll hit flash. And we type in our password. And this will flash it to this device. And then once it's done, we have a bootable Linux ISO image and we can boot right into it, and I'll show you that next. Now, as you see, I am booted up. I put Linux Mint on a USB flash drive, and then in my BIOS, it'll be a different hotkey for you, but mine is F12. You just spam F12 on my system until it shows up the boot menu, and then I selected that USB drive specifically. And then once I selected that drive, now it goes to here, and this screen you're seeing specifically is what you will see as you boot up into it. And what we want to select, here is Start Linux Mint 22.2 Cinnamon. And that is the latest Linux Mint. So I'll click this here, hit start, and it'll boot it up. All right, now we're here. We're booted up into Linux Mint, and this is what it's going to look like. So now, right now, we are on the live ISO. So we're running this operating system off of our USB flash drive. And now what we want to do is actually install it to our hard disk that is installed in our system. And the best way to do that, and if you just want to try out a distribution and play with it, you can do that now. So I can actually boot up in Firefox here, and it'll load it up, and we can literally type in, you can be like, oh, what is the weather today in Las Vegas, right? Or whatever. Okay, cool. So you can use this like a normal system. You can scroll around, you can whatever, go to YouTube, right? If I can type, you can go to YouTube. And you can go to YouTube, right? And you can just find these channels, whatever. Looks like a pretty cool channel. And you can watch videos and you can do whatever. It's like a normal browser. But what we're here to do is actually install Linux Mint onto our hard drive. So you double click this. I know it's going to do a big spiel on all these different partitions, setting up your home partition, root partition, swap partition, etc. But I think it'll just be easier just to follow the system installation prompt and just get ready to go and get set up. So obviously select your language, just follow all the prompts. We'll walk you through it. It is pretty simple. We'll go English. And then I recommend against using Secure Boot. Most Linux distributions do support it, but just for compatibility's sake, I would just uncheck it. And then yes, I would install multimedia codecs just so you don't have to worry about trying to play a video and it doesn't play because you don't have that codec installed on your system. But if you do care about having only free open source codecs, then you probably don't already know you don't want these on your system and you're not going to check it. So, yep, install multimedia codecs. And then I will say erase disk and install Linux Mint. This is why I highly recommend installing it on a clean system because this will be the best way to install it. So nothing else is on that drive, no other operating systems, no other boot managers, no nothing or bootloaders or whatever. Just a completely clean system because you can hit this something else and you can resize and make more partitions for your system. But that gets a lot more complicated and it's really easy to mess up your system and then you don't have a system that boots and you got to start over anyway. So highly recommend doing this and then we'll just hit install now. Just follow the system prompts and then yes, pick area. I'm in this time code or I'm in this time zone and yours will obviously be where you are based on your IP probably. And then we can just do Linux Mint, computer name, Mint system is fine. Username. If I remember it, we can just do Mint. Super secure password. Wow. Super secure password. Let's do this. I'll require my professor to log in. Yeah, we'll just do that. That's safer. All right. A little drink of tea while we're waiting. This is exciting. This is exciting. All right. And depending on your system, this can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. So just be patient. It'll install everything it needs to. And yeah. And then once this is done, our system should reboot. And then we're going to be running on the actual hard drive instead of off of that USB flash drive. And that means we can store state. We can store stuff in our home folder, our downloads. Everything will stay how we like it. And that's the way we like our systems to be. Linux Mint should be fully installed. What we're going to do is restart our system. All right, so we booted back into Linux Mint. This is what you should see on the page when you log back in and you removed your installation media and you just made sure on that original drive, if you don't have anything else, you might have to go back into your BIOS and select the new drive you just installed Linux Mint on as your primary boot device. And it should boot right into this. And then we enter our password. We can move windows around. And here we can move. All right, we got our desktop environment. This is Firefox. It comes pre-installed. You can just follow all these things, change your colors. Say you want, I don't know, something like a dark mode. And you like this color, right? There we go. Now we're in dark mode. Looks nice. I prefer dark mode. Manage drivers. And if we go to the software manager, that's how we update all of our systems. All right, this is a software manager. It works a lot like familiar with the App Store in Apple or the Google Play Store. So here's something you install. If you don't like Firefox, I do like Firefox. But if you're more of a Chrome user, you could try out a browser called Brave. So we'll just search up Brave. And then you might ask, what is FlatHub? Likely it gives you a little nice drop-down menu that make it really easy. And a Flatpak is basically just a way to bundle applications with everything they need and depend on to run all in one container. These are also run in a sandbox environment, which just means the application is isolated from the host system unless it's given permission or access to it. And there's a couple of competing technologies in this space, most notably Snap and App Images. And these application technologies just allow software to be cross-distributionable. I don't really know if that's a word, but it's just saying a developer makes one application and it packages it as a Flatpak, App Images, Snap. And the most popular one right now is really Flatpak, so people are pushing weight behind that one. Flatpak is pre-installed on Linux Mint, which is nice just to get you going. Let's install Brave. And if you do like that Chrome-based life, Brave is really good for privacy first and using Chrome, getting all those features from a Chrome-based browser. And it's really nice. I prefer Firefox just because it's not based on Chromium, but that's for another day. Perfect. All right, we got Brave installed. We used the software manager to install and then install it via FlatHub. All right, we did it. That is an exciting feeling. We got everything we needed set up and a better learning of what an operating system is, and getting the basics of the mechanics and how the Linux operating system works. I really encourage you to explore around and see how the Linux operating system feels. I believe this is truly a great setup for anybody just getting started, but alas, with the nature of Linux, if you are unhappy with how something is or how it works, you can definitely change it. And there are a plethora of different options out there for you to explore and choose from. I personally have settled on GNOME for my desktop environment, at least for the time being, but that can always change in the future. It is simple, just works, and allows me to get work done without it getting in my way. And I've really grown to love the idea of showing as little as possible and letting applications be full screen, especially when working on the go. My mind really tends to wander, and I definitely have some form of ADD tendencies, and just leads me off track and down rabbit trails. So it's far easier for me to stay on task when I have only one window in front of me at a time. Now, if you have any questions of clarification or anything that didn't quite make sense as I explained it, please leave a comment down below and I will get back to you in a timely manner. If you enjoyed the content and got some value out of what I produced, I would greatly appreciate you taking the time to give this video a thumbs up. And if you really like the content and the mission of this channel, consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification to be notified when I post more content. And if you have any suggestions for new content or ideas you would like to see me cover, leave that down in the comment section below. And thank you for being on the journey of privacy with me and making a huge move to install Linux and learning how to use your technology in a privacy respecting way. And remember, there's some good in this world and it is worth fighting for. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.